When we think about history, our minds usually jump to a timeline, right? A list of dates, dynasties, and big battles. But what if we're looking at a civilization that was way more interested in big ideas than in specific years? Well, that's what we're doing today. We're going to dive deeper than just a simple history of ancient Bharat. We're going to try to crack its foundational code, the very operating system that made it tick for thousands of years. So, that's the big question, isn't it? How do you even begin to understand a place like this? When you look at the records from ancient Bharat, you find these incredible epic poems and really deep philosophy, but you don't find the same kind of year-by-year history that we might be used to. And here's the thing, that's not a flaw, it's a feature. It's our first clue that we need a totally different kind of key to unlock its story. And these are the keys right here. To really decipher this civilizational code, we're going to explore 5 huge concepts: Dharma, the nature of kingship, the structure of the city, the reach of its trade, and a completely unique understanding of time itself. Let's see how all these pieces fit together. Okay, our first key, and honestly, it's probably the most important one, is Dharma. The best way to think about it is as the cosmic blueprint for everything that follows. It's the foundation that the entire civilization was built on. So, what in the world is Dharma? It's a famously tricky word to translate. It's not just religion, and it's not just law in the way we think of it. It's so much bigger than that. It covers everything from your personal moral compass to a king's duty to his people, and even the fundamental balance of the entire universe. It's about the right way to live, the right way to act, on every single level imaginable. And this idea wasn't just set in stone from day one, it grew and evolved over centuries. In the super early Vedic age, Dharma was all about Rita, this idea of keeping the cosmos in balance by performing rituals perfectly. But later, during the time of the great epics, the idea expanded. It started to include all sorts of ethical and social duties. Fast forward to the Mauryan Empire, and it actually becomes a core principle of state policy under Emperor Ashoka. And finally, this massive concept gets systematically written down and codified in texts called the Dharma Shastras. And this leads us to the most crucial point. This is the big mind shift for most of us. You see, a lot of modern societies are built around the idea of individual rights. But the entire framework of Dharma is built around duty. The central question wasn't, what am I owed, but what is my responsibility? And that fundamental difference in perspective changes absolutely everything else. So if Dharma is the blueprint, how did that apply to the people in power? That brings us to our second key, kingship. How do you actually govern a society that puts duty before anything else? Well, for starters, the king was no absolute tyrant with unlimited power. His authority was first and foremost moral. He was completely bound by Dharma. His position was also sacred, yeah. It was divinely sanctioned. And this is so important, he himself was not a god. And finally, he was accountable. His job was to be a protector of the people and the land, not to be the outright owner of it all. The contrast is just night and day when you put it next to the idea of absolutist monarchies that popped up in other parts of the world. In that system, you often had a monarch with the divine right to rule, who claimed absolute power as the owner of the state. But in the Bharatiya model, the king's authority was totally conditional. It all hinged on whether he was following that higher moral principle, Dharma. And this was the ultimate check on power. A king's right to rule was never a blank check. If he failed in his duty, if he acted against Dharma, he lost his legitimacy. Simple as that. Duty was both the source of his power and its absolute limit. Okay, so we've got a society guided by duty, led by a king bound by a moral code. But what did that actually look like on the ground? Well, our next couple of keys, the city and trade, show us a civilization that was incredibly organized, really prosperous, and deeply connected to the rest of the world. Looking at the ruins of ancient cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro it's mind-blowing. I mean, we are talking about cities from over 4,000 years ago that had perfectly planned streets laid out on a grid. They had shockingly advanced drainage and sanitation systems, and even specific zones for different workshops and houses. This shows you there was a deep, deep focus on community, order, on public health, and on just making things work. And these cities were not sitting in isolation, not by a long shot. They were major hubs in a massive global trade network. Archaeologists have found Harappan seals, which were like unique branding for their goods, all the way over in Mesopotamia, what we call Iraq today. Thousands and thousands of Roman coins have been dug up in southern India, and ancient texts tell us all about these powerful merchant guilds called shrainis that manage this huge commercial network over both land and sea. So here's the really powerful takeaway here. Ancient Bharat was a huge player in the global economy of its time, but its whole model of interaction was based on trade and cultural exchange, not on building a giant military empire to go out and conquer its trading partners. It was a kind of globalization driven by commerce, not by colonialism. All right, on to our final key, and this one helps explain the why behind pretty much everything we've talked about. To really unlock the code, you have to get your head around how this civilization thought about time itself, and it's a perspective that is profoundly different from our own. For most of us, time feels like a straight line, right? It moves from the past, through the present, into the future. But in the Bharatiya worldview, time, or kala, is cyclical. It moves in these enormous, repeating cycles, ages called yugas and kalpas. We're not talking about a human lifespan here. This is a cosmic timescale, spanning billions of years. And crucially, these cycles are tied to morality. They see ages of truth and order that slowly decline into chaos, before the whole cycle starts all over again. And that right there brings us all the way back to our original question. See, if you believe that time is just an endless cycle where the same moral patterns play out again and again, you're going to be a lot less interested in recording the exact date of one particular battle. You're going to be far more interested in understanding the timeless principles, the Dharma, that govern those repeating patterns. And that explains the intense focus on philosophy and ethics over what we'd call history. So we have our 5 keys: Dharma, Kingship, the city, trade, and time. Now, let's put them all together and see the big picture, the coherent system that they create. This table just lays it all out so clearly. You can see these aren't just 5 random ideas. They form a completely interconnected system. Dharma is the moral foundation of it all. Kingship is how you turn that morality into ethical government. The city is the physical expression of an ordered collective life. Trade is how you extend that ethos to the world through peaceful interaction. And the concept of time gives the whole thing its incredible philosophical depth. And so, the central message here, the main takeaway, is this. If we only try to understand ancient Bharat by memorizing a list of dates and dynasties, we are going to miss the entire point. The real story, the true genius of it, lies in these powerful interwoven concepts that shaped how millions of people lived and thought for millennia. I want to leave you with this final thought, which I think just perfectly captures the essence of this civilization, one where ideas were the true engine of its existence. It's a powerful reminder that there are many, many ways to build a world, and just as many ways to tell its story. Thanks so much for joining us to explore this one.